Aloha e komamai. I'm Hanako Wakatsuki, and I'm the Acting Chief of Interpretation at Pearl Harbor National Memorial. Welcome to the opening ceremony of Beyond Pearl Harbor, Untold Stories of World War II, a virtual education program. As you all know, the coronavirus pandemic has drastically changed our daily lives. Many of us are staying home whenever possible, and health experts have discouraged large gatherings. Unfortunately, this includes in-person events like the annual National Pearl Harbor Remembrance Day ceremony. But even in our separate homes, we find a way to come together so we can honor those who lost their lives. On the morning of December 7, 1941, the Empire of Japan launched a multi-pronged attack across the Pacific. Military bases in Hawaii, Guam, Wake Island, the Philippines, and other Asian countries suffered many casualties. The attack on Oahu came in two waves, destroying nearly 200 U.S. aircrafts and damaging all 8 U.S. Navy battleships. 4 of the ships were sunk, and although most of them are raised and returned to service, the USS Arizona remains at the bottom of the harbor to this day, with almost 1,000 sailors and Marines entombed, and including the 43 who have been interred since. Normally, a ceremony will be held in person here on site. Participants would be able to see the ship for themselves. They would be able to feel the weight of that tragedy in the air that they breathe and the ground that they walk on. To be physically in such a space carries more meaning than looking at it through a screen. But at the same time, this online public program poses a unique opportunity to reach audiences across the country. On Monday, the December 7th ceremony will be virtually accessible to those who are unable to visit Pearl Harbor National Memorial, even under normal circumstances. It also gives new generations an opportunity to see how much this history means to us. So for the first time, we are complementing the December 7th event with this weekend education program. More than 2,400 service members and civilians were killed at Pearl Harbor. Another 1,200 were injured. Consequently, we were drawn into a global conflict that would result in over 1 million casualties for the U.S. Armed Forces and costing many more lives around the world. This weekend is dedicated to remembering the struggles and sacrifices and triumphs of those who were affected by the war. We want to thank you all for joining us in spite of these unusual circumstances, and we especially want to thank all the veterans who are watching for your service and for your stories.
December the 7th was a day that I and my family will never forget. I'm sure anyone who's living here in Hawaii will never forget.
Enveloped by a total numbness, so everything seems, surreal. Denial and disbelief. This can't be true. This can't be happening.
Why did this happen? And why did it come to us? Why did it hurt the people in Hawaii?
A little hard to even talk about it. It's even hard to put it on paper.
Can't remember how I felt, except I was worried for my father that he wasn't home. You want your father with you when you have trouble like that.
Recovery after the act, it was chaos.
We knew we were at war and it was frightening. We had no idea how it was going to change our lives.
And the thing that flashed through my mind is that you're a dead man, you're going to get killed. And my first thought then was, Mother, I'm sorry.
I remember the bullets hitting the ground right in front of my eyes. That picture stays with me. It will stay with me throughout my life.
I always remember everything about December. I've never forgotten even an increment part of December 7th.
I just think of these guys that trapped down there, couldn't get out, and what they gave up, and how they really tried to do their best under the horrible circumstances to help their buddies and to try to save themselves. Just like the song says, remember Pearl Harbor. We'll remember.
There's an emotional feeling because of the men that are there. And I'm proud of them. And I always try to read all the names when I go there.
Pearl Harbor National Memorial has a different meaning for everyone who visits. For many people, it represents the sacrifices and the tragedies that come with war. Some see it as a reminder to be vigilant in case of another attack. Others think of the need for diplomacy and peaceful solutions. Nevertheless, Pearl Harbor is a unique place where military, history, culture, and the environment all converge and inform one another. Next, we will hear from some very special guests about what this history means to them. It is an honor to introduce Mr. Gregory J. Slavonic, Undersecretary of the U.S. Navy, and Mr. Yutaka Aoki, Consul General of Japan in Honolulu. And finally, we will hear from our Acting Superintendent, Mr. Scott Birch.
December 7th, 1941 dawned quietly for the United States of America. Then everything changed. 353 Imperial Japanese aircraft plunged from the sky at Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, raining fire and destruction on Battleship Row and other targets across the island. The enemy sank 5 battleships, 3 destroyers, and a training ship, while damaging 11 more. Over 200 American aircraft were destroyed. Most importantly, 2,403 Americans were killed and over 1,200 were wounded. On this day, and every day, we must always remember the heroic sacrifices these sailors, Marines, soldiers, and civilians made for their country. But we must remember the way our fleet and our nation responded to the shock of this attack, to fight our way to victory 4 long years later. President Roosevelt declared December 7th, 1941, a date which shall live in infamy. He was right about that, but thanks to the valor demonstrated by the warriors of Pearl Harbor and the millions who would mobilize in their wake, Roosevelt was also right when he closed his speech with this prediction. With confidence in our armed forces, with the unbounding determination of our people, we will triumph. So help us God.
Aloha. As the Consul General of Japan in Honolulu, I humbly offer my deepest, most heartfelt condolences for the souls of the fallen at Pearl Harbor. On December 7, 1941, countless service members and civilians serving to uphold their noble duty of protecting their homeland had their future, their dreams, and their hopes brought to a sudden and most tragic end. We must never forget them, and we must never repeat the horrors of war again. This is a solemn vow that we, the people of Japan, have made. I succeeded this vow from the generation of my parents, survivors who themselves lost many in the war. The words recited by them as I was growing up would make even a little child realize the horrors of war. The generation of my parents survived on the milk and sweaters sent by the people of America during the post-war poverty, and saw Japan transitioning back as a member of the international community under American support. This generation kept close their feelings of deep gratitude for the kindness and tolerance shown by Americans, and these feelings were passed down to my generation. In 2016, the year that marked the 75th anniversary of Pearl Harbor, the leaders of our two nations jointly visited the USS Arizona Memorial. In his address, the former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe offered his deepest condolences for the fallen at Pearl Harbor and stated, quote, Japan and the United States, which have eradicated hatred and cultivated friendship and trust on the basis of common values, are now, and especially now, taking responsibility for appealing to the world about the importance of the tolerance and the power of reconciliation. Over the last 7 decades, Japan has respected freedom and democracy and has embraced the rule of law, while resolutely upholding its vow to never again wage war. The Japan-US alliance, which is rooted in our shared common values, is stronger than ever and stands as a cornerstone of peace and stability in the Indo-Pacific region. I am certain now, more than ever, of the presence of this power of reconciliation and the vast magnitude of its reaches. My parents' generation taught us of the vow to never again wage war and of the spirit of the tolerance. It is my sincere wish that next generation in Japan and across the entire globe will fully embrace the significance and meaning of these two phrases, as well as one more, the power of reconciliation, in the decades to come. Mahalo nui loa.
Aloha kako, e komo mai. Hello everyone, and welcome to the opening ceremony of our virtual event Beyond Pearl Harbor, Untold Stories of World War II. I'm Scott Birch, the Acting Superintendent of Pearl Harbor National Memorial. On behalf of the National Park Service, I would like to thank you all for joining us in this opening ceremony. It's a great privilege to preserve this history and to share it with visitors from around the world. Our deepest gratitude goes to the U.S. Navy, the Consulate General of Japan in Honolulu, and Pacific Historic Parks for their collaboration in this event. The events of December 7th, 1941 forever changed the United States and the world. The island of Oahu suffered thousands of casualties in a single morning, marking an unprecedented tragedy in American history. But the story of Pearl Harbor is as much about the response as it is about the crisis. Both service members and civilians showed incredible fortitude as they defended the island, and then overnight, an entire nation rallied behind them. In addition to Pearl Harbor National Memorial, there are more than a dozen U.S. National Park units dedicated to World War II history. Each of them commemorates a different aspect of the war, and because this year marks the 75th anniversary of the end of the World War II, we are taking a more holistic approach than usual to cover a wide variety of experiences. Some of the stories we have to share have been largely forgotten, and we want to take this opportunity to honor those moments of courage and perseverance. We hope this inspires a new generation to appreciate and learn more about the brave men and women who suffered so much. We also hope that those who remember the war will feel empowered to share their stories. In fact, we ask you to consider this as an interactive event. If you or someone you know has a story to share, we encourage you to record an oral history through our partner Saga. Saga is a social media app that allows you to make audio recordings even over the phone. Collecting these histories is an important part of remembering those who answered the call, including those who gave their lives in the process. And to the rest of our partners and content contributors, we would like to say thank you for helping us make this special weekend possible. Because of you, we are able to further our mission of sharing these stories.
when in song we are blessed to be, mending the rifts of our apathy. I answer you. The sound of laughter one day will fall in love.
Despite being the second of the world wars, World War II still had unprecedented consequences. Around 3% of the global population died because of the war, and tens of millions were injured, traumatized, and displaced. Many of these casualties came from some of the most notorious atrocities of the modern era. The post-war years brought significant change as well. For the US, they ushered in major economic and technological developments. The world witnessed the rise of nuclear warfare, and as European colonialism faded away, a new set of empires grew and sought to expand their influence. These are some of the more intellectual points of remembering the war, but most of us look back on it for personal reasons. Maybe we're related to someone who served or even died in the war. Maybe we know someone who was victimized by it. But even if we experience these connections only indirectly, the war is still part of our nation's collective memory. Our society is still grieving from it. 70 or 80 years might seem like a long time ago, but an event this devastating will take generations to heal. In fact, we are still in the reconciliation process, and some incidences have not yet been atoned for. But in our effort to preserve and make up for the past, we are often thinking of the future. After the war, leaders around the world set out not only to memorialize it, but also prevent it from happening again. They created the United Nations and the European Union to encourage peace and cooperation. They wrote a Declaration of Human Rights. The US provided aid to help war-torn countries recover their economies. So as we remember and reflect on the war, we might ask ourselves how we will apply those lessons to our future.
ホノルル市の皆さん、お元気ですか？長岡市長の磯田です。今、新型コロナウイルスで大変なことになっていますね。私たちのように会いたくても会えない、往来できない状況が世界中で続いています。大変なこの事態の中で、ホノルル市の皆さんがご無事でいらっしゃることを本当に心から祈っています。今年は戦後75年の節目の年であります。真珠湾での追悼記念式典、参列したいのですが参列できません。大変に残念です。しかし、戦争の痛みを知る私たちが、共に平和のメッセージを世界に向けて発信し続けることは、とても大切なこと、重要なことです。姉妹都市として手を取り合って交流を深めていきたいと思います。今年はもう渡航できません。しかし、ホノルル市の皆さんに思いを馳せながら、そして 近い将来必ず再会できると信じて、長岡市民とともに平和のメッセージをお送りいたします。世界平和への祈り、ホノルル市とともに。
We have a lot of content lined up for you this weekend, focusing on a variety of World War II topics. Pearl Harbor National Memorial and other National Park Service sites were designated to tell the stories that are important to us. With the weekend's education program, we want to revive stories that might have been forgotten. We hope that in doing so, everyone will find something new to learn. Through the website at pacifichistoricparks.org/virtual programs, you can access pre-recorded videos from the National World War II Museum, the Smithsonian, Pearl Harbor Aviation Museum, USS Bowfin Submarine Museum, Defense POW/MIA Accounting Agency, Heart Mound Wyoming Foundation, and various national parks units, including Pearl Harbor National Memorial, Rosie the River World War II Homefront National Historic Park, Golden Gate National Recreation Area, Tuskegee Institute National Historic Site, Port Chicago Naval Magazine National Memorial, Minidoka National Historic Site, Manzanar National Historic Site, Tula Lake National Monument, Honouliuli National Historic Site, Bainbridge Island Unit, and the Manhattan Project National Historic Park. For a limited time, you can also access 10 documentaries as part of our film festival. On Saturday and Sunday, we will feature live stream content that will begin at 10 a.m., 12 p.m., 2 p.m., and 4 p.m. Hawaii Standard Time. On Saturday, we will have a glimpse into the heroism displayed on December 7th, 1941, a film screening from Minidoka National Historic Site and Q&A with survivors, segregation during World War II from Tuskegee Institute National Historic Site and Go for Broke National Education Center, and stories of Hawaiian warriors from the University of Hawaii. Sunday's program will include the story of Buffalo soldiers and Nisei soldiers from Golden Gate National Recreation Area, an introduction to Port Chicago Naval Magazine National Memorial, story time with special guest George Takei, and what led to December 7th, 1941 from the Smithsonian Air and Space Museum. The chat box feature in these programs will allow viewers to speak directly with one another and with presenters as they share their stories. In a time when many of us are suffering from isolation, we hope that these programs can help people find connection. If you are interested in participating, you may want to check out the schedule on our website for more information. Now, before we move on to our virtual activities, we have one more acknowledgement to make. It's important to recognize the land we stand on and how our lives tie into the greater story of that land. So as we honor those who died at Pearl Harbor, we must also pay our respects to the people who first lived there. Also known as Kanaka-Maoli, Native Hawaiians are the original inhabitants and descendants of Polynesians who migrated to the Hawaiian Islands. As the Aboriginal people of Hawaii, they lived on and stewarded the land for over 1,000 years. Originally called Pu'uloa, Pearl Harbor was renowned for fishing. The name Pearl Harbor is derived from the abundance of pearl-producing oysters in its waters. In the mid-1800s, the United States entered into a reciprocity treaty with the Kingdom of Hawaii, which enabled the U.S. to have exclusive rights to Pearl Harbor as a coaling and repair station for ships. In the years that followed, things took a darker turn for the Kingdom of Hawaii and its many subjects. By 1893, a group led by mostly American and European businessmen staged a coup to overthrow the kingdom. At Iolani Palace, less than 10 miles away from Pearl Harbor, they deposed Queen Liliuokalani and abolished the Hawaiian monarchy. The ultimate goal was the annexation of Hawaii by the United States, which Congress approved on July 4, 1898. The Spanish-American War ended a month later, and after taking control of Guam and the Philippines, the U.S. government decided to establish a way station in the Pacific. Within 10 years, the naval base at Pearl Harbor was built. Colonization is not the most flattering side of American history, but there is a direct connection to the attack in 1941. Historical events aren't so much points on a timeline as they are bricks in a building. We are still affected by the impact to this day. So just as we continue to enjoy the freedoms our service members gave their lives for, there are also communities who still feel the loss of theirs. Acknowledging the land that we occupy is just a small part of mending our relationship with Native Hawaiians, but if we want to go further in our tribute to them, or to those who served in World War II, we might ask ourselves how history can play an active role in today's world. The men and women who lived through World War II are often renowned as the greatest generation. During the war, and the Great Depression before it, they sacrificed conveniences for the needs of their loved ones, their neighbors, and their country. Hundreds and thousands sacrificed their lives. This generation also valued honor. They took personal responsibility for their mistakes and knew that reconciliation was as important as victory. And although the war ended 75 years ago, there will always be conflicts and crises that test our character. What we do today will affect those who will come after us. So as we spend the weekend learning more about those who served, we might also think about how we want our generation to be remembered and what kind of legacy we will leave behind. Either way, we hope you will find this weekend's program both educational and meaningful. And once again, thank you for joining us in this opening ceremony. Don't forget to go online to pacifichistoricparks.org/virtual programs to access all the programs that are now available. We hope that all of you watching at home are safe and healthy. We look forward to the day that we can all come together again.